Ashes to ashes, reel to reel. Things were beginning to look bright for Samuel Monroe on this fateful day. 40 years earlier, he was one of the most revered businessmen in the United States. He was said to have the industrial sense of Henry Ford, whom he had met on multiple occasions, and the leadership skills of President Franklin Roosevelt. Things have changed since then, however. Now he was just an old man, suffering a slow and bitter death from the disease known as human indifference. Today, however, would be the day that things would change. He was offered an interview by a prestigious magazine, one that was published in dozens of languages and read by millions of people around the world. Or so he was told, at least. It was a Sunday afternoon in November. The interview was being held in the living room of his small suburban home. He was dressed in the nicest suit that he could find, the very one that he had worn when he stepped down from his position as CEO of General American Industries some 30 years earlier. He was, of course, a much slimmer man at the time, and the suit was now such a tight fit that anyone who saw him would surely think that if he wore it for too long, he would die of asphyxiation. Sitting across from him was Roger Evans, age 45, the man who would interview him on this fateful day. He was a seasoned veteran in his field who began writing in the magazine back in the 1950s. In that time, he interviewed everyone from Marilyn Monroe to Richard Nixon. With such a resume, Samuel began to wonder why he had never heard of the man until now. Roger sat calmly in his chair, reading through his notes for what he dubbed the interview of a lifetime, a chance to meet Samuel Monroe, the Baron of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Will you be starting the interview soon? Samuel asked, somewhat impatiently. Yes, Roger said. Sorry for the delay. Sometimes these reel-to-reel machines can be a pain in the neck. Resting in between the two men was a reel-to-reel tape recorder connected to two state-of-the-art condenser microphones. It, much like Roger, represented a new era of society that was just as frightening as it was frustrating to Samuel. It's a wonder why people use these things. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned pen and paper? Samuel asked. I'll still be taking my own notes. This just lightens the load a little, Roger said. Well, with any luck, this thing will lighten the load of my stomach ulcers. Samuel joked, snorting at what he thought was a very clever response. Roger chuckled politely, as not to embarrass the poor fellow. It had been a long time since people were obligated to laugh at his miserable joking skills. After turning a few knobs and pressing a few buttons, and doing a quick quality check for assurance, Roger finally seemed to get the machine to work. It was now time to start this interview, the interview among interviews.